welcome back. This is the first of the track sessions today. You're in track 5, so hopefully everyone's in the right spot. To reintroduce myself, I'm Sam Bumgarner with UNC Charlotte. We're glad to have you here. Just as a reminder, I've got a table out in the main area. If you need information on PDU courses, we do offer them here. Our Lean Six Sigma certifications are kind of our highlighted PDU courses right now. Information's on the table, so please come by. If you don't see me, just grab it. I know I'm a little bit up and down today in these classrooms, so I apologize for not being right in front of my table as I usually try to be. But we're glad to have you in this track today, and I'd like to introduce our two speakers, Kim Hill and Mindy Bostick, both with North Highland. Kim is a change management project lead, while Mindy is a people and change executive. And between the two of them, they have 55 years experience, both in leadership, change organization. All of it. I don't know what they're doing. Leadership, change management, project management, and many other things. So I think this will be a great session. Thank you both for being with us today, and I'll turn it over. Thank you.
So I was asked to make a public service announcement before we get started. I think there have been some questions about whether you needed to register to get credit for the first session, and the answer is no. Your registration for the day of learning gave you credit, PDU credit for the first session, but from every session on these track sessions, you'll need to make sure you register, come in so you get those credits, okay? So if you didn't see them on the way in, catch them on the way out, make sure you remember to do that, okay? Another thing that some of you have already done this is going to be an interactive session, so if you are able to pull up your little trays, you're going to have a chance to do some work yourself. I think they slide up, sort of like being on an airplane. So you can do that. And we do have a few more than 50, and I think we'll make do with. So a few of you were not able to get all the materials, so we'll help you through those pieces. So you have come to a session about change management, but is it what you're thinking about when you think of change management, right? So people use the term change management to mean a number of different things. So why don't you just kind of shout out, what do you think of when you think of change management? Pain? Okay. Transition? Control? People impacts? Rumors? Documentation? Okay. Awareness? So, scope? All right. Scope, change, control. And so there's a lot of things that brings up a lot of images in people's minds. And, we do hear things like, sometimes it's production change control, right? In the IT shop, you have change management. So every time you're changing production, you go through a particular process. It could be project scope changes. It could be enabling organizations to change. It could be change logs, that type of thing. For today, just to be clear so you know why you're here, and we may see a couple people running, screaming out of the room, but today we are focused on enabling organizations to change. So I wanted to get that definition out there up front for you. So we're going to be looking at it from the application of a structured process and set of tools for leading the people side of change towards a desired outcome. So we're going to really focus today on the desired outcome, because that's why we're asking people to change, right? We aren't just trying to play with people's lives. We're asking them to change for a reason. So we're going to focus on that. So what makes a successful outcome? Well, when you think of what leadership generally requests and requires in order to initiate a project, they're usually looking for about three things. They're looking for projects that are going to meet objectives, right? They want to make sure that you've got clear objectives and they agree with those objectives and you're going to meet them. They want to make sure that you're going to be on time and on budget. And there's got to be some sort of benefit for the organization or they're not going to sanction it. So they want some type of return for their investment. So they want that. So how do you get that? Well, generally a structure is put in place, right? So you have the leadership and sponsorship that are sanctioning the change, they're writing the check, they're providing the resources to get the work done. You've got project managers and you've got a project management team that's put together that orchestrates the process to create the future state and to transition to it. But who's thinking about the people side of things? Well, that's where change management comes into place. So we're going to talk a little bit about it and how it fits in with the rest. So there are three things that we're going to hope that you take away with you today. And one is, yes?
Sorry, just a quick question. Is this would be something like management of change as well?
It would be, the question was, sorry, we're recording, so I'm going to repeat. The question was, is this management of the change as well?
Oh, management of change.
Management of change. This will be management of people that are required to change.
That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yes. So the first takeaway is that change management is needed to ensure business outcomes. So we're going to explore that a little bit. The second point is that change management plans include more than training and communications. So we'll unpack that a bit as well. And then the third point is that change management works with project management side by side, integrated throughout the life cycle of a particular project. Okay, so those are the three things we're going to talk about today. So let's begin by talking about how change management enables business outcomes. So to do that, we're going to do our first little exercise. And for that, you're going to need a blank piece of paper. So we have some extra paper here if you don't have a piece of paper. Kim will pass out if you need a pen.
Everybody need paper or pen?
So we're going to make you work this morning.
Anybody else? Paper?
Okay, so as the last couple are getting.
So the question was, are we turning this in?
No, you do not need to turn it.
They're passing it down. Does anyone else have a picture?
Now you only have to write legibly enough for you to read what's on the piece of paper. Okay, so on your blank piece of paper, want you to create 4 columns. You're going to be creating what's up on the slide here. So I want you to draw 3 lines to create 4 columns. And on the top of the first column, label it project name. On the second column, write purpose. Third column, particulars. Sorry, it had to be P's. And the fourth column, people. So think of a project that involves people doing something different. It could be a project you're currently working on. It could be a project that you are scoping now and planning to do, or it could be a project you just completed. But think of a project that required people to do something different. On the first column, under project name, write down the name of that project. Then on the second column, under purpose, write down just a few notes to yourself. Again, this is not being turned in, about why, what is the purpose of that project? Why did you do that project? What were you trying to achieve, or what are you going to try to achieve? What was that desired outcome? Okay, and when you're done with that, on the third column under particulars, list in general terms what is changing. You've got maybe some technology changes, you've got maybe some process changes and some role changes, but be a little specific, but not, you know, you don't need to list, put your whole project charter down on the page. Like for instance, if you were doing a 401k self-serve type of project, some of those particulars might be process changes for the benefits administrator. It could be changes in role for the benefits department and processes and technology changes for them. And the organization as a whole, there could be some technology changes and maybe some process changes and that type of thing. So just take a moment to think about those and list those down. And when you're done with that, in the last column is people. So who are those people? What are those groups of people that are going to need to do those particulars that you listed in that other column? They could be people internal to your organization or external. You could have vendors or suppliers that are impacted. Just make a list. Want to compare the project purpose, which is the what is changing, with the people, that is the who is changing. So what percent of your purpose or outcomes that you've listed there is linked to the people doing something different? Okay, so if it was a server swap, the answer might be 0, right? You're just switching out some infrastructure and life goes on the same as always has been. The 401k benefit solution, you know, it's probably in the 65 to 70% range because in this particular example, it required people to make a lot of changes versus the technology that was going in there was just a very small part of what the actual benefit was going to be. So it could be, you know, 40%, 70%. So think through that, write that down. So give me some examples. What do you think it is for your project? 100? Others?
60.
60?
80.
80?
75.
75? Okay, all right, well, those are very people impacted projects. So, if you look through those last two columns and think through that, look what's in those particulars, in your particulars column. If the people don't do what you have listed in that column, it really doesn't matter what it was you set out to do, right? Doesn't matter what the change is. Because if the people don't change those particulars, you can't achieve the purpose of your project, right? So people are central to achieving those business outcomes.
All right, so you've gone through the exercise, and we're looking at this from your world, okay, not from a change management perspective, but from a project management perspective. And I imagine every day in your job, a project is assigned to you to probably deliver a particular solution. You spend your time thinking about what the current state, you start thinking about the future state, you lay out this great project plan that can take you through the transition, right? And it looks beautiful. Everything looks awesome. And then suddenly, something's not quite right. People aren't using the tools. They aren't using the processes that you laid out. You're sitting in a meeting, and all of a sudden there's some managers that appear almost threatened, right? They just don't even understand where this whole project is going. Or you may even have some folks that are sitting in a room and they're like, you know what, I'm not on board at all. I'm not going to do it. I don't even understand what the vision is. And you're saying, how can that be? We had a beautiful plan. We laid it out, current, transition plan, the future state. So what happens in a project when you start hearing those kinds of comments is that a lot of times now you're experiencing a future state that looks more like this. I call it the Swiss cheese, all right, little thing, because adoption and usage impacts are not there. So what does that mean? It means the environment was set up properly, but the people haven't made the transition. And even if they have made it, they're not there to the fullest. And you're going to see in a minute what we mean by people not being to the fullest when we get into this. So let me ask you a question. Does anybody experience this? Everybody, right? Everybody in this room. And so really what happened, and what I thought would be a good way to demonstrate what this is all about, before we get into the how we solve the Swiss cheese mode, I wanted to share an example. It's a very recent example of a project that I saw, and it was a company that was really having a tough time getting their arms around the beginning and end date of their contract workers. And there were thousands of them going through this company, right? A lot of companies deal with contract workers and probably deal with this issue all the time. Well, the reason why it was such a problem is because there were various departments that touched contingent workers or contract workers. There were different technologies, different systems. All these different things were happening that wasn't giving this company a clear indication of when contractor workers got here and when they were actually walking out the door. So a project team was created to try to solve, to not only document the current state, but say, okay, what are we going to do about it? And the team put together a data warehouse solution. It was awesome. It was phenomenal. You would not believe this system. It enabled different departments to access it. Different systems can actually talk to each other, right? So it was beautiful the way it was laid out. The system was clearly a winner. IT endorsed it. Everybody was on board, it appeared. And the team obviously had done a fabulous job of really thinking about what the current state was, what the transition plan was going to look like to get there, and what the future state of it, what the benefits were going to be. So there was a presentation that was made with senior management, and guess what happened? Timeout. Project breaks the whole project. So what do you think that is? What happened? Does anybody have any ideas?
They didn't have buy-in.
Who said that? Yeah, didn't have buy-in. Well, ding, 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 you were the winner, all the way back there in the back. That's a big part of what happened.
Never managed.
Yeah, never finished the project, right? So yeah, the buy-in part is And what happened was is this particular project lead could not demonstrate to senior leaders that all people were on board. And they were hearing the rumblings of the people, right, about, because they were starting to hear about this system, and there was a little bit of rumblings, and it wasn't clear, how this data warehouse solution was going to impact people that actually had to touch the system. So we needed the other departments, we needed their buy-in, and the scary thing is, not only were they not engaged, they weren't even asked how their processes were impacted by this solution. And so there was real strong resistance, as you would imagine, and because there were no shared objectives, everybody started going off on tangents on what the solution should look like. And finally, the project lead brought in change management, right, to kind of save the day, I guess, or do something. I'm not sure at this point what change management was supposed to do, but I can tell you that the resistance among these individuals was so strong that the change management actually shifted from a partnership with project management into a very highly reactive damage control situation using communications. So do you think that project got off the ground? It was supposed to go live April 2015. How many of you think it went live? You were correct again. You're correct. That project still is still in damage control mode, trying to get the individuals on board with a solution that is clearly the way that the company needs to go. Yes. Got a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Did they create an as-is environment?
They did. And so, and the project lead is just a brilliant individual. And so there were a lot of individuals that were involved in this that were high-fiving it. But the challenge was when they got into the system implementation of it and the people they actually needed to do something different, they're like, whoa, time out. That's way too much work. I can't pull that off. I don't have the training. What are you doing? You had the supervisors running around with their hair cut off. So yeah, they did all the right things, but because the change management wasn't done simultaneously, that's when they found themselves in a reactive mode. So I appreciate that question. So the question was, did they establish an as-is situation? So sorry about that for not repeating the question.
I have one question.
Yes.
Did they do a stakeholder analysis?
Did they do a stakeholder analysis? No. The answer would be no. They did not. And so when change management was actually brought in, it became very apparent that they had a very small scope of stakeholders involved, right? But the people that actually had to do the change
Weren't seen as stakeholders.
Yes. The people that were seen as critical stakeholders, back to Mindy's slide, the people that actually had to do something different were not identified and mapped at all by the time change was brought in. So you can imagine. So the bottom line is, and if we're not employing change management, we kind of end up with the Swiss cheese outcome, as I like to call it. I want to share with you some industry research, and I find this stuff pretty fascinating. I love research. Mindy loves research, and don't take it just from our word or your own experience. But most of you got the AdCar book. That is a part of an organization called ProSci. They're a world leader in change management. There are others. I'm not suggesting that ProSci is the only one. But I do want to use this ProSci a study to kind of show you the correlation between project management and change management, and how that directly impacts not only the business outcomes, but ensuring that your project stays on time, on budget, and within scope, which is what we all want, right? So ProSci is a world leader in change management. There's about 70,000 plus community members. There's 20,000 certified ProSci practitioners. Mindy is one of them. ProSci is known for its tools and methodology. It's known for its best practices. And believe it or not, its benchmarking research is actually used by about 75% of Fortune 100 companies. So I'm just going to share a couple of slides with you at a high level to give you an indication of this correlation. So when you think about the success of a project and meeting objectives, this chart shows you of those that participated in this recent ProSci study. It was about 3,400 individuals that participated. Of those that participated in the study who rated change management poor, only 16% reported meeting or exceeding objectives. And if you look at the opposite end of the scale, of those who rated change management excellent, 96% reported that they met or exceeded their objectives. That is a huge difference. So you can see how meeting objectives really increases based on the quality of the change management plan, at least in this study, from the folks that participated in the study. So I would say the whole thing, the same holds true for budget, the change management correlation with budget. Of those who rated change management poor, only 48%, less than half, said they were on or below budget. Yes?
One of the questions I have is project size varies. So I find that change management can be kind of a task that the project manager has to take on versus, I have a consultant or someone on my team doing change management.
Yes.
Can you talk to this correlation? Because when I think of budget, oftentimes, unfortunately, people are like, I can't have a group of consultants
That's right.
helping with change management. So can you talk a little bit to that?
We actually will talk about that a
Okay.
little bit later on with some very specific things to do when you don't have a dedicated change management resource. We feel your pain, we get it. And so there are some things as we get through this that hopefully will be some takeaways that you can have to apply. Is that fair?
Great. Thank you.
And so the question was again, I forgot to repeat it, heavens to Betsy, I keep forgetting that we are being recorded. The question was, can we speak to how we address change management, particularly when there's not a dedicated resource or a consultant that can come in and help. And so we will definitely address that a little bit later in the presentation. So we talked a little bit about the budget, and then finally, let's look at the schedule and change management and being on-time delivery. And how that can be impacted. Obviously, the state of warehouse solution is a living, breathing example of how timelines can just get completely whacked if change management is not involved early. And so this chart actually shows of those who rated change management excellent, about 72% said their projects were on or ahead of schedule. So I don't want to belabor this, but I think you get the point. And what we want to do today is kind of help you understand a little bit at a high level what really constitutes effective change management and see how your project plans can be organized in a way with change management in tow to really help you deliver those business outcomes, stay on budget, stay on time, and more than anything, make sure that we deliver the outcomes.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about how change management impacts the business outcomes. So let's move on to how project management and change management complement each other. And to your point, sometimes this can be one role doing both. As the project gets more complex, it behooves you to have separate people each focusing on their particular aspect. Well, let's talk about how they come together and where the focuses are. So let's start with the project management piece. So, project management, as you all know, you have your focus is on defining that the current state, the future state, and a plan to move to realize that future state. So you have project plans, you've got scope, you've got very technical processes and methodologies that you use to organize that experience. At the same time, we have change management who's focused on moving through that same current state, transition, future state process, but the focus of change management is on the people side. And change managers also have methodologies that they use. And again, there are a variety of them out there. We're using ProSci today as the example. And with ProSci, they have a 3-phase methodology, and theirs is preparing for change, managing change, and reinforcing change. So they have their methodology that dovetails into the project management methodology. But as we talked about earlier, that you've got those individuals, remember from the Swiss cheese slide? You've got individuals that you need to deal with too. It's not just the organization piece. that needs to be focused on. And from an individual perspective, ADCAR uses, or ProSci uses the term ADCAR to refer to the steps and the building blocks that people have to go through individually to change. So ADCAR stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So let's think through this process. We'll take a walk through the process of how somebody or yourself goes through the process of changing. So the first step is awareness. So think about a recent change that you have had to undergo, either personal or professional. Just kind of keep it in your head so you can kind of think of your own examples as we walk through these things. So the first step of being able to change yourself is knowing what the change is. Right? It's a little hard to change what you're doing if you don't know what the change is. Which was a little bit of the example that Kim gave on the data warehouse. People were like, I don't know anything about this. Right? They can't be expected to change without that. So you need to know what's changing, why are we changing, right? And what's the risk of not changing? If anyone has a small child at home, you probably hear the why word a lot, right? So why do I have to do this? Actually, not small child. I have teenagers. That's worse. So you got to understand, and what's the risk of not changing? What are those consequences? People need to understand that. So I personally went through a change at work not too long ago, and where we were changing career paths and roles and responsibilities firm-wide. So, as you would expect, lots of questions. I needed a lot of information. I needed to know, what is it going to look like? How does this impact me? You know, is this going to be good for me or not good for me, right? There's a lot of information that I needed. So awareness is key, and you have to start there. People are stuck until they know the what's and the whys. So think about your personal example you've got in your head. You know, how did you feel when you first heard about it until you understood more about it? You know, frustrated, anxious, worried, right? It brings on a lot of emotions along the way. So once you get the awareness down, so you understand what it is, then it's time for desire. You've got to make a personal decision of whether you're going to make that change or not. You need the information about it first, but nobody can decide for you whether you're going to change. My example, I had to decide which career path did I want to go down, or another choice is this still the right organization for me, or should I be thinking about doing something different? I mean, that is a personal choice. Nobody can make that for me, right? So same with, you've got an organization full of people you're trying to change, and they all are making personal decisions whether they're gonna opt in or not. If they don't opt in, then you get the Swiss cheese effect. So think about your decision for your change. You know, how long did it take you to make that decision? Did you have to back up and get more information, go back to awareness, and then in order to make it? So after you get past desire, then you're able to get to knowledge and learn about what it is you need to do to make the change. How many of you have either helped orchestrated or conducted a training class where you get in the class and the people that are taking the class don't want to be there? Or how about they don't show up, right? So what do you think happened? What do you think caused that? They didn't have the right information, and they didn't have a chance to do what before they went to class? Buy in. Make that decision to opt into the change. they show up and they're either, fight you the whole way, or sometimes they don't show up, or they leave at the first break. That's always fun too, right? It's like you get to the point where you don't want to give anybody anything to drink, there should be no reason you need to leave this classroom. But if their eyes and ears aren't open to learn, it doesn't matter if you have them locked in. They're not going to absorb because you don't have their attention because they haven't bought in. So for my example, there were things, the path I chose, there were things I needed to learn. And a lot of my learning was informal training, not necessarily formal training, but there was a lot of things that I needed to do to get up to speed on my new role. So once you get through knowledge, then you're still not quite there, because you got to be able to do the job. You have to have developed the skill. If anybody has ever watched me swing a golf club, you would totally understand there's a big difference between knowledge and ability. So taking classes, and all that, I know exactly how you're supposed to stand and do, but when I do it, that ball's still sitting on the tee. So, you've got to provide the coaching, the mentoring, the support for people to get good at it. Taking them through a class does not necessarily make them good at it and make them able to do it. It's a step, but they need to be good at it. So then lastly, reinforcement. So you have them doing it. How do you keep them doing it? So how many of you have ever broken one of your New Year's resolutions? All right, so whoever's not raising their hand must be asleep. So, think of all the exercise programs that went by the wayside, maybe because you didn't have an exercise buddy. Or, what would have happened to your investment accounts or your savings account had you had some sort of incentive out there for saving that extra $200 a month you said you were going to do, so you could save for that dream vacation, right? Things don't stick unless there's an environment, a healthy environment out there that is supporting what it is that you're doing. I had a lot of good reinforcement on my role as I took it. I had people thanking me for things, and so there's some good positive reinforcement that kept me going. So you can't just stop at the, they did it once, yay, done, right? It's the, we've gone live, let's eat cake, and everybody go their separate directions, right? You've got an organization who's tried it. You don't have an organization yet where it's embedded. Big difference. All right? If you look and you track that over time, you can see, whoop, here's a big spike and everybody's using it, and then you find 6 months later everybody's gone back to doing the same thing that they were doing prior. Anybody ever run into that? All right? So you've got to have reinforcement in place. What we talk about in the world of change is that everything before go live is all planning and preparation. The real change doesn't happen and start until go live. Then the real work comes in play when you're trying to keep people on board, to the point where it's been part of the fabric of the organization. And that's quite frankly the tougher part. So I've talked to you a little bit about it, but now you get a chance to play with this a little bit yourself. I told you, we're making you work this morning. There are a few of you that came in towards the end that did not get one of these personal assessments. If a kind person that is sitting close to you wouldn't mind sharing theirs as far as looking at it, and you can write your answers on a piece of paper rather than on the sheet itself. That would be helpful. I think there may be 2 or 3 people that might, and I'll try to verbally say some things too on here as well. So ADCAR factors into every change that people make, whether it's personal or professional. And understanding where somebody is on their ADCAR helps you create the right types of experiences or provide the right kind of information that's going to get them through that change process. Right? You've got to provide the information to them because people change themselves. We don't change the people. So we're going to do a little practice where you're going to be able to do one of these for yourselves. So as we start thinking about this, I'll tell you a little story about my grandmother. So I grew up in Northeast Ohio, not too far from Lake Erie. And the winters there, for anybody from that part of the, we got a few, yay! The winters there can be pretty brutal from a lake effect perspective. They get pretty cold and windy and lots of snow at times. So my grandmother, as she was getting older, was complaining in the wintertime about being cold at night. She was piling on the blankets. It was just not sleeping well and that type of thing. You know, and as people get older, we've probably all been there. It's hard to buy presents for older folks that kind of have everything. So we were really excited because we thought, you know, we can really help Grandma out. We're going to get her an electric blanket because that way, depending on the temperature, she can just dial up or down, and we'll give it to her for her birthday. So we were like excited because we finally had something other than the perfume or, you know, whatever, the obligatory gift card and everything. But actually, this was before gift cards because I was pretty young. So we wrapped it up and gave it to her for her birthday. So she opens the gifts and all that. The next thing we know, she set it down on the floor and she started kicking it away from herself. I think, you know, what's up? You know, well, it turns out she wanted nothing to do with that blanket. And we couldn't figure out why. It's like, well, and so we, you know, talked to her again about, you know, you're cold. This is going to help you get cold or get warm. And, you know, and anyway, we just on, and she wouldn't use it. So I'm going to stop there, and I'll tell you the rest of the story in a little bit. But it's your turn. And these will not be shared, although I will want to hear some of the scorings, but not the stories. So you can be as personal as you want to. So I want you to think of a change that you're either trying to have someone else make, and it's not going very well. All right, this needs to be a current in flight because we want to help you take something with you can use. Or a change you are personally trying to make for yourself that's not going very well. All right? You guys have it in your mind? Okay, so if you pull out your worksheets that you were given, or if you have a nice neighbor that's willing to share theirs, that would be wonderful. If you open up the worksheet on the top of the first page, there's a box for you to just briefly write down what the situation is. Again, this is for your personal use, so you don't need to write an essay or anything, but just so it makes you think through it a little bit, just write down a little bit what it is. And then you're going to go for each of the ADCAR elements. Here you're going to go through, there's some information that it gives you at the top of the form, like for awareness, it says list the reasons you believe this change is necessary. So you're putting the whys in there. And then there's a ranking box to the right. And you want to think through, either for yourself or the person that you're trying to change, think through how the degree to which the person you're trying is for instance, aware of these reasons. How much do you think they are aware? And the scale is 1 to 5. 1 is not aware or very little aware. 5 would be very aware. So it could be a continuum along there. It could be a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. All right, so you'll score awareness. Then you'll go on to desire, and you'll list the factors or consequences, good and bad, for this person that create a desire to change. What would be what's in it for them? Either goodness or not so good. And then you'll score that as a 1 to 5. So you'll just go through all 5 elements of that ad card for your change. When you finish, you turn to the back and you summarize your rankings, 1 to 5 here. And then if you have time, you can even do a little bar chart for those who like to see the bar charts. Are there any questions on the form before you spend a few minutes and do this?
Ranking 1 to 5. Again, which one's the?
Low is 1.
Okay, thanks.
5 is high.
Got it.
interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I can say. Anybody need a little more time? Okay. Give it another minute, and then you'll hear about Grandma. Okay, well, while the rest of you are finishing up, let me haul Grandma out again. So, Grandma wouldn't use the blanket. Why do you think Grandma wouldn't use the blanket?
Fear. She liked her old
Fear.
blanket.
Like the old blanket? Fear? Any other?
She was born in an era where electricity was exposed and there were lots of injuries and accidents.
Born in an era where electricity was exposed.
Someone else telling her what to do.
Someone else telling her what to do.
Cost.
Cost, okay.
Heavy.
Pardon?
It's heavier.
Heavier?
Didn't understand how to turn it on and operate it.
Didn't understand how to turn it on.
She doesn't have an outlet near her bed.
Doesn't have an outlet near the bed. You guys are creative. You're doing really well for Saturday morning. I've usually turned my brain off by Friday night around, or maybe Friday afternoon, around 3 o'clock. Okay, so let's think through her situation from an ADCAR perspective. By the way, back then I was like 12, so I didn't really understand this yet. But anyway, but here's what we did. So when you think through the grandma's situation, from an awareness perspective, we had told her about it many times. We were giving her the benefits, especially since she was complaining that she was cold. It was meeting a need. What's up? And here's all the wonderful benefits about it. So from my perspective, awareness, I would have rated her a 5. Desire, kick away. That was a big 1, right? She had no desire. It was not I'll try it, but I don't really like it. She wouldn't even get it out of the packaging, right? She wanted nothing to do with it. Knowledge-wise, some of you mentioned, well, maybe she didn't know how to operate it. She knew, it just had an on and off button and a dial, all right? So that was a 5. She knew exactly how to operate it. Ability, she was very functioning, very high functioning. She had the dexterity to move. She could plug it in, and it was not an issue of mobility or anything like that. So she was able to do that. And from a reinforcement perspective, I would probably rate that probably maybe a 4. I mean, we were probably to the point of nagging, because it becomes kind of like you've taken up the banner. We are going to get Grandma to do this kind of thing. Have team huddles about, all right, what do we do next? Those kinds of things. So the issue was desire. And this gentleman over here hit it on the head, exactly. When we finally got her to open up enough, and again, this was months later, this was not like days later, she finally admitted that she was afraid she was going to get electrocuted. So we had to show her the UL listing on the cord, and tell her that no one has been electrocuted by one of these, and and just kind of reassure her, we all use them, and look, no burn marks, and that type of thing. So it took some more, discussing. Again, I had to go back and give her some more information for her to finally use it, and she did, and she absolutely loved it and used it until the day she passed. So. Anyway, so it was great, but we had to get her past here.
She wasn't electrocuted, right?
She was, no. She lived to be the ripe old age of 93 and just, natural causes took their
So you rated a 5 on knowledge, but to me, she didn't have the knowledge of the safety. It wasn't that she didn't desire to be warm. She didn't desire your products because she didn't have the knowledge to know it was safe.
Right, so when we rated her, it was what we thought she was. So when you deal with desire could be rooted in either awareness, or it could be knowledge, or it could be any of these where you need more. So this is your rating to determine where to start. The answer may lie in any of the other ones, especially when it's desire, because the desire is the decision, right? So in order to make the decision, you've got to have more of something else.
So that's
Yes.
something you have to revisit.
Question.
Exactly.
When I was doing my own, desire was the only one that had a dramatic score. All the rest of mine were kind of in the middle. And the reinforcement, I would probably put that lower in your case, and the reason being, if she was in a group of 5 ladies and the other 4 had them up, were using them, that would be more of the reinforcement. I see my peers using it, and therefore I'm the only one that's not using it, versus just telling her about it as a reinforcement versus all my peers are doing
Right.
it would make me rate it higher.
Yeah, and again, it's a bit subjective. That was kind of the difference between the 4 and the 5 in my head. And I'll talk to you in 1 minute about. We'll do a little more analysis on this, and it may make a little more sense. First, I want to get some volunteers to read their scores out. Again, you don't have to tell your story. Just read your scores out so we can look across a few of them. So if I get a raised hand, I'll, yes.
So for mine, I evaluated it at 2,
2,
1,
1,
5,
5,
5,
5,
2.
2. Okay. Another volunteer in the back?
5,
5,
4,
4,
5,
5,
5,
5,
1.
1. Okay. I saw somebody over here. Yes. 2,
3,
3,
5,
5,
3,
3,
5.
5. One more.
5,
5,
4,
4,
3,
3,
2,
2,
5.
5. Okay. Great. Okay, so let's talk about, we talked about the process of you're kind of moving down the road, right? You've got to go from awareness to desire to knowledge, and it's a progression. If you look for the first instance, you can look on your sheets too for your own personal assessment. The first instance of where you see a 3 or below, that is considered the first barrier point, meaning somebody's stuck and they're having a hard time getting to the next thing because of them being stuck. So you could have multiple barrier points and that you need to address, but you always start from left to right. Kind of back to that gentleman's point of you've got to have the awareness before you can have the desire. So in this instance, Grandma, we started with desire because that's where, we thought we had given her all the information, but she had no desire and we needed to find out why. This instance, so we have, this one's a 2, sorry, it's a little hard to read, but you've got, in this instance, awareness is where you're stuck. In this one, down here, it's reinforcement. Somebody got all the way through the process and had trouble sticking with it, right? Try it once, try it twice. This one's back in awareness. This one is a knowledge point. So what you look at then is what do we need to do to elevate this to a 4 or 5? So somebody has enough of whatever the element is to be able to, it satisfies them so they can move on to the next thing. Does that make sense? So you may have a number of, here we've got, once you get to the awareness, hopefully it will then help them make that decision. But you may get to your decision, where they get to their decision, depending on if it's you or somebody else, and find out you still need more awareness. Again, it's not a linear check the box. People will regress, especially from a reinforcement perspective. Here's somebody who went through and didn't, and fell off. So what happened? Is it, maybe you need to look at these again. What needs to be in place? So things will atrophy if you're not using it, you forget how, and then there's got to be something going on with desire if they're still not using it. Yes.
So in essence, like that last one, knowledge. If you improve knowledge to a 4 or 5, could in essence you then, if you reassess it, you may then have lower desire once they know more about it. Could you actually, you have to keep like recycling through the XR scores to kind of see how you backtrack the prior steps.
Yes, and the question just for recording was that once you have addressed like knowledge in this one example, do you need to reassess because once they learn more about how to do it, they may have changed their mind and decide, I no longer want to do this. Absolutely. This is not it's a process you need to get them through, but that is not one directional. Right? It's people, it's us. It's usually not us, it's usually the people we're trying to change. But I hate to tell you, it's also us, right? So we are unique creatures, and it very much is bi-directional. And you could think that they're there and they even have the reinforcement, and then all of a sudden something happens. It could be something like cultural happens, that all of a sudden this used to be a great thing to do and now it's an awful thing to do. And you're starting from scratch again. So it's a difficult thing when you deal with individuals. But we're special, right? All right, so does that give you a little bit of understanding? And you can take that form home. I have had people take it home and do it on their significant others. And found that's been helpful, and they'll show it to them. Here's why you won't change. I wouldn't be that heavy-handed, this is not a club, it's a tool.
There's a question.
Yes.
Well, it's not a question. I just want to say that I've used the tool, and it's a great tool just for personal development. I mean, it makes you ask your own questions about the changes I need to make in my own life, and you sort it out, and you go, oh, I don't have enough knowledge to do all these things. Maybe that's the place I need to develop myself so I can do the change. But if you don't have the process to find out why am I mixed up and why can't I move forward, this lends that. So it's totally here as well.
Yeah. So for the others, it's a great tool to use, yourself personally and professionally when you're presented with a change. Yeah. It's a nice little tool. So you have the ProSci has given you a complimentary book that unpacks this concept even more. So if this has kind of piqued your interest, then you've got some materials you can take and learn more about the wonderful process we go through when we try to change. So people's ADCARs are as unique as we are, right? The term that somebody said one time that's kind of stuck with me, that we're all special snowflakes, right? Not one is like the other. And then we also learned earlier that individuals have to change in order to make the future state. So now you're sitting there thinking, okay, so my project is impacting 3,000 people. How do I work side by side with 3,000 people and figure out where they are and how I help them go through their ADCARs? Well, you can't, right? You wish you could sit right alongside every single person and help them. But there's got to be an organizational view and levers you can pull
that will start to address those outcome or their individual ag cars, but at an organizational level.
So how do we do that, right? So you can see, before I dive in and kind of show you some of the levers that Mindy's talking about with AdCar at the organizational level, I hope you've walked away so far with just a couple of things. And please, we understand that people are at different places when it comes to change management, right? Some people have dedicated resources, some don't. Some people have gone, down the path with change management many times. Some people may be new, and this is a new concept, and that's okay. So we hope that we're giving you enough detail, things that you can take away and adopt in your own experience. But if there's one thing I hope you're experiencing so far is that, what change management really is and what it's not. And I think if you can use some of these bullet points when you're trying to advocate for change management in your projects, it's definitely not a program to make all stakeholders happy, right? It's just not going to happen. It's not just about the communications and training, which I think we set up front. It's not a one-time event. It certainly isn't finished when we go live in UK, right? But what it is a program, and it's a very systematic program. It really helps. I think someone had mentioned earlier about stakeholder analysis. It is a process where you take your stakeholders with a means, to give them the means to be prepared and to give them the means to be engaged with the change. And it's very structured, just like your world. It's very structured in the change management world. There are techniques that we really use to create buy-in and, believe it or not, mitigate risk as we see them. And it is a process that really does recognize that individuals handle change as we've gone through the AdCar exercise that you can see. But the deal is you can still do some basic assessments on different groups and where they are in the change process and actually use different levers to get people to move along AdCar. So Mindy said that people can bounce, back and forth, but really and truthfully, it does kind of go left to right, right? We certainly can't do anything with DK, A&R if people aren't aware, correct? Would you agree? So it is a kind of a left to right process. But for example, with the data warehouse situation, and again, the project manager was phenomenal. I don't know how much experience he had around change management, but what was interesting is when he brought change management in, he was ready to go training, right, and awareness. Those are the two things he wanted to do. And what happened was when he started to try to make these people aware and do the training, that's when he hit this real big wall, when it came to desire. So when you look at these levers, and there's more to it than just the ones you see up here, but these are really the main ones. You can look and see that communications can do a lot to bring awareness and reinforcement, but it really doesn't do much of anything else to create the knowledge and the desire or the ability. And if you look at training on the flip side, obviously that has a lot to do to help create a lot of knowledge. It can even help with some ability. Or to the gentleman's point earlier, with added knowledge, it can help people, you can go back through and maybe create some additional awareness. But the bottom line is when you see these errors, we actually use techniques in each one of these, whether it be communications, a sponsorship roadmap or management plan, coaching, resistant management. Believe it or not, resistant management is a technique that is used sometimes that can help create desire. And so there are very specific things that we can do in that. So part of the secret sauce, I guess if I were to say in effective change management, is really using the tools at the right time as a part of the process, as a part of the change plan, and make sure you're using the AdCar model as you're thinking about the different groups of individuals and where they are. So does that mean everybody sitting in a training session is all going to be ready to go? No. But hopefully, if you've looked at the group of organizations, done your stakeholder analysis properly, right, then you kind of know where the groups of individuals are and what techniques you need to use. I will say if you get out of the order of the natural progression, there's a really good chance, in the case of the data warehouse person where you have the desire is not there, or you end up with 1,000 of Mindy's grandmas hanging out trying to get your project implemented. So if you go through it, when ADCAR outcomes are reached across the population, okay, we go through using the techniques, we build the awareness, desire, knowledge, and ability, and reinforcement that has a direct tie and a direct link to those business outcomes, meeting objectives, finishing on time and on budget, and actually delivering business outcomes actually that have a return on investment. So if we go back, let's go back to Mindy's slide because I want to blow out a little bit some of the actual techniques that are used to help make this happen. When you go back to the project management and change management complement, while you're working on the technical side of moving from current to future state or making a decision to stay as is, whatever it might be, you're still working around what? A statement of work. You're trying to determine, there might be a business case that you have to put together. There's a schedule, there's tracking. You got to figure out what your resources are and what your budget estimations are. So on the change side, here's what our tools like. Here's what these tools look like. As we're focusing on the people side of change, we're actually building different tools to prepare, manage, and reinforce change that look things like ready assessment. Are people even ready for the change? The communications plans. We look at things like a stakeholder analysis. Where are the different people that have a vested interest in this project? Where are they, right? And what do we need to do to move them along the ADCAR scale? Communications plan, training plans, and even resistant management. And we even take the time to build things into the reinforcement. And what does that look like? And how to use the same change in which the project is over, your project is over, and you've gone live. So the technical tools and using those together while you're focusing on the solution to make sure it's designed, make sure it's developed, and it's delivered effectively, change is over here saying, okay, is it embraced? Is it adopted? Are people using it effectively? And if we do both of those simultaneously, at the end of the day, we kind of have a joint value proposition where we actually deliver those business outcomes. So any questions about that? Yes.
What exactly is a sponsor roadmap? Because sometimes one of the biggest problems is whether the project sponsor has the legitimate authority, respect, to really be the right sponsor for the project. What is a roadmap?
So a sponsor roadmap is a set of activities that are targeted for the leaders in the organization to do to move their organization towards the change. So the sponsors, from a change perspective, are more than the person who's writing the check. It's the leaders that the organization that's impacted looks to as driving their organization. So it's the people that you would want standing in front of a large department saying, we're going here, why? It's the inspiring.
So you'd call them change advocates or early adopters.
They would be change advocates from a leadership perspective. You'd want change advocates within the organization,
right.
but
these
you'd also,
are the higher
these
level.
would be the higher level that you put to work. So let's talk a little bit about next steps. I'm giving you a lot of information, so I ask you, so what are you going to do with this information? How are you going to increase the focus on the people side of your projects? It was brought up, you may or may not have budget to have change managers side by side, but a lot of this depends on the scope and scale of your project. But if you as a project manager are going to be responsible for looking after the people side, how do you equip yourself? So just some things that we'll toss out there for you to consider. One, again, we mentioned there are a number of methodologies that are available from a change management perspective. We've been talking about ProSci today. ProSci does offer a number of training courses. It has a 3-day change management certification course to teach the practitioners how to understand ADCAR and to be able to apply the processes, methodologies, and the tools that we described to you a little earlier. There is a sponsor course for those leaders so they understand the critical nature of their role. The number one success factor in all of ProSci's research for a successful project is active and visible sponsorship by the leadership. It's that critical. So there's a course for them. There's a course for managers to help them. They're the coaches. They're the people who really get, right next to the people who are making the change and can help them. They're the ones that can do individual ad cars because they are close enough and the scale is small enough they can deal with people one-on-one. And then for employees, so they understand what it is they're going through to make that transition a little easier for themselves. And then also there's a workshop for project managers and project teams that goes in way more detail than this about what to expect from your change managers, how the plans align, and those types of things. Some other things that we would recommend that you consider is to think about your change management needs as you scope the project, not when you're getting close to deployment and you think, oh, we need somebody to come in and train these people and to tell them what's happening, right? Start up front. Scope them in. Decide whether do we need somebody besides the project manager to really focus on this. Is this the type of effort that needs that? Engage your change management leads if you have them, or get them if you need them, as you build the project plan so it all works together. You may have to discuss this with your management team. If they aren't aware, if they don't understand the value of change management, use the little exercise we did at the beginning with the 4 columns. Have them walk through it for themselves and let them make the correlation of, oh, I guess it is people dependent. We probably need to think about these folks. And then if you have any questions or you want any more information about ProSci training or licensing or whatever for the methodology, I've got my contact information up here. Feel free to reach out and I can give you some more information on that. So are there any questions? We've kind of covered some things as we went along. Any other questions before